Excellent. All right. Thank you for handling housekeeping for me, Kane. I appreciate it. So I just wanted to welcome everyone to this town hall style meeting. Where this started out as a discussion. Well, actually, it was as a it started out in Facebook with one person saying, "I would love to talk to everybody." Mr. Aman Singh, who said he'd like to talk to everyone in Queensborough about a topic, and he goes, but we just can't meet right now. And I said, I can help with Zoom. Would that be great if we started a meeting? And so that's how this started. And it actually kind of grew from there. It was for one particular topic that we were discussing, but it's kind of grown out of there to include many other levels of our community leadership. We've invited our MP, Mr. Peter Julian, and I don't believe he's actually arrived yet. Mr. Aman Singh, our MLA. Patrick Johnstone is here as representing the city. He's a councillor here in our city. And we also have Gurveen here as well. Sorry. Oh, and here comes Peter. Look at that, perfect timing. Speak his name and he shall appear. So
you have to say it 3 times. It's the magic part. Oh, sorry.
I just got muted, so now I'm not muted, so now you can hear me. And welcome, Peter. I just announced that you were going to be joining us, so I see that you have joined us as well. So, and we have Gurveen here as well, who represents the school board as the chair of the school board of trustees, and very excited to have them all here. And we actually do have some other members of our community leadership in our audience as well, who are choosing to stay in and watching. But if they do want to participate in the speaking aspect, please do let me know, and you know who you are. Let myself or let Kane know in the chat, and we certainly can help you there. Now, the format for this that we're planning on today is to give each of you a 5 to 7 minute period of time for you to introduce yourselves to our residents. That was the main topic of all this, is to say, hey guys, the residents really want to get to know you. So we would love for you to give us some information about yourselves, and also about what services that you and your level of government provide for us as residents here. And also, how can our residents engage with you? We'd love to know that as well. And the topic that we had set was transportation and transit. Now, that may not apply to you in your position. So if there are other things that you want to tell us about, by all means, please do. But we will at some point get into the topic of talking about some of our little transit issues, because we are, after all, kind of an island community who is connected to our mainland a little differently than most cases. So it makes for some unique challenges that our residents would love to hear about. And with that, I think we should start with starting at the federal level, if that's possible. Peter Julian, would you be willing to start us off? And I will go ahead and spotlight you, if that's all right.
Absolutely. I should say I've had some technical problems because I've just set up a new computer. So I'm hoping this is my first Zoom conversation on this laptop. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And you look lovely too. So video is working great. And we're so
Wonderful.
happy to have you here.
Terrific. Well, I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of the Kite First Nation and the Coast Salish people.
Thank you.
And particularly at this point in our national journey together, this is extremely important to acknowledge and to appreciate. And I'm thrilled to be back with Queensborough residents. I will tell a bit about myself and a bit about the services we offer, and then get into what we're seeing at the national level in terms of transportation, because I think that is relevant to the issue that Queensborough residents and Queensborough students are facing. So I was born and raised in New Westminster. After graduating from NWSS, worked for a while in a variety of industries down in Annacis Island, including local factories, and then eventually earned enough to go back to school. I went back to school back east, lived back east in Quebec for about 10 years, and then came out with my family back to New Westminster. And I live 4 houses down from the family residence at 2nd Street and 10th Avenue. So we live in the Glenbrook area of New Westminster. course, growing up in New West, spent a tremendous amount of time in Queensborough, and it's really one of the neighborhoods that has changed the most over the past few decades. And I think it's important to note that the issue of services is something that I think all three levels of government have to acknowledge. I was thrilled to see Aman Singh become the new MLA, because he certainly understands the importance at the provincial level. We've got terrific folks both in the New Westminster School Board and at City Council that understand that. And at the federal level, we're endeavoring to provide as much supports as we can to Queensborough residents. So my office, as you probably know, is at the New West SkyTrain station. We moved there in part to be more accessible with the key-to-key ferry, to actually have Queensborough residents access the services. We have been endeavoring prior to COVID to, as much as possible, be in Queensborough to hold workshops, clinics, particularly for casework. It's something that is fundamentally important. So up until COVID hit, we were, I would say, probably in Queensborough on sort of a regular basis, just to make sure that we were available for casework and available to provide supports for constituents. Since COVID hit, it's been a challenge from two standpoints. First off, of course, the fact that we are not able to have that physical presence has been a real challenge. But secondly, the casework has exploded. We normally handle supports for about 1,000 people or families over the course of a year. Through the last year, 15 months, it's been about 5,000. So the casework has quintupled. My team has worked as diligently as we can. And at the national level, what we've been endeavoring to do is respond to the casework challenges that people have raised by pushing for a variety of things that initially the federal government was not willing to do. For example, the emergency response benefit, that was something that Jagmeet Singh, as our national leader, pushed, and as House leader, I was responsible for negotiating that agreement. So it came to being at $500 a week. To ensure as well that there were stipends, emergency supports for students, for people with disabilities, for seniors, providing supports with the wage subsidy to maintain work through the pandemic, but also to make sure that small businesses throughout the communities of New Westminster and Burnaby had access to a workable rent subsidy as well. And initially, the government was not agreeing to something that worked. We were able to force them eventually to put in place a rent subsidy that has worked for most of the small businesses that I've been speaking with. So the casework, the concerns that people were raising in Queensborough and throughout the riding were directly related to the work that we pushed for in Parliament to make sure that those supports were in place. And we continue to do that because we know, unfortunately, that with the advent of variants, that COVID will be with us, I think, for potentially for still some time to come. That we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not through the tunnel yet. Finally, I'd like to address the issue of transportation. This is extremely important at the national level, because one of the consequences of COVID over the last year and a half has been the collapse of our national transit structure. This is something that is extremely important when we think of the Highway of Tears, for example. Indigenous women not having access to affordable bus service in the north. This is something that we've seen right across the country as a dire need, and the collapse of the intercity bus network has made whole populations far more vulnerable and much more difficult coming out of COVID for us to come right across the country, which means that we are endeavoring to push hard to put in place a national transportation structure and strategy that would actually allow for the same type of supports for intercity bus or bus transportation across the country that has existed, particularly back east for years through a national train structure through Via Rail. And the idea of a national transportation structure or strategy also can have impacts in communities like ours, where transporting students coming from Queensborough to the mainland, if you like, or to NWSS, this is something that the federal government should be providing supports for, in our opinion, and it's something that we'll continue to fight for in the coming weeks and months. So I wanted to lay that out. I look forward to the conversation and look forward to hearing from my colleagues at City Council and School Board. Gurveen's on, and Patrick Johnstone, and of course, Aman. And I think it'll be very instructive for us to know what the next steps are, and for me to know what direction I'm getting from my bosses, who are my constituents, about what we can endeavor to do to contribute to some solutions for Queensborough. So thanks very much for the invitation. I look forward to the evening.
Thanks so much, Peter. I appreciate your being here, and what great information. And it was nice to hear the national strategy on transportation. So that's great to know that there's something that we can grab onto here that we can ask questions for as well later. And thanks for everyone who's asking questions. I see there's some very specific questions coming, which is wonderful, but that will be at a little bit later in the meeting. So for now, I would love to transfer over the spotlight power over to Aman and have Aman introduce himself to our community. And I think this is probably one of the first opportunities that you've actually had here we go, Aman. There we go. I think everyone can see you now. One of the first opportunities since your successful election, and congratulations earlier this calendar year. And please have that. I'd love to hear what you have to say. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Kat, and thank you, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. I really, and as Kat mentioned, COVID is really, it's been hard to be newly elected in COVID. Because I've been an advocate for people all my life, and I enjoy meeting people and listening to people, and haven't really been able to do that in person for so long. So this is our new format. Hopefully, and as Peter said, COVID is not over yet, but hopefully there's a bit of reprieve, and a few of us are able to see each other, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I've tried to be in Queensborough off and on over the last few months, minding the provincial health orders and meet a few people here and there as much as I could. So a little bit about myself, because this is sort of my first opportunity to introduce myself. I was born in India, moved to Hong Kong when I was just a few months old. And so I grew up in Hong Kong, went through high schooling in Hong Kong. And my parents moved from Hong Kong to Richmond, to East Richmond, in the late 80s, in 1988 specifically. While they moved while I was in university in Berkeley, in California, Berkeley. I was attending university, so when they moved, I was still a dependent, and I came across with them. We lived on Cambion number 5 area in East Richmond for quite some time, and my constituency office has not officially opened yet, but we have a space. It's made. It's right opposite Starbucks on Bridgeport, a block and a half away from IKEA, opposite Home Depot. Richmond Queensborough, it's a strange constituency, as you mentioned. Queensborough is sort of stuck in two worlds in many ways, right? And so it's also the largest urban riding in Canada. So the constituency office, I chose that location because it's about 15 minutes from Boyd and Duncan, and about 23 minutes from the western side of my riding, which goes all the way to number 3 and the river. I'm a lawyer by trade. I've been a civil rights, human rights, immigration lawyer for the last 20, still am allowed to practice, but I'm in LA now. I was a lawyer for practicing those areas for 21 years. So very familiar with Queensborough. I've had lots and lots of clients in Queensborough, and have been, know quite a few people from Queensborough. So I've been visiting Queensborough ever since I became a lawyer in the late 90s, early 2000s. Queensborough has one of the greatest food security organizations or groups in the Lower Mainland, and that's the Guru Nanak Free Kitchen that operates out of the Sikh temple there. Amazing organization. They provide thousands of meals every Saturday and Sunday to people on the downtown east side, and all volunteer run, no grants from the government, nothing. And like amazing organization. So I volunteered with them before, and that's given me the chance to be in Queensborough quite a bit. So I'm the new MLA for the area. The British Columbia government has, so there's, this last year has been a strange year because normally you would have a lot of different things on your plate, but COVID has really been front and center for us, right? How to get everybody through this unprecedented time safely, and how to come out of it, and how to have an economic recovery that works for everyone, right? That doesn't just work for large corporations or people at the top, but works for you and me. So I'm really, really proud to be part of a government that has had like the highest rate of help for people throughout this, not just for regular folks supplementing what the federal government has done, but also for businesses, especially for small businesses. And the British Columbia government really looked at it and did not want to burden people with more loans. So those have all been grant programs, which is really significant because this is money that you don't have to pay back. And that's really helped. That's helped a few businesses in Queensborough. They've come through my office and spoken with me, and we've guided them towards getting those small business grants, and also in Richmond as well. So we've had some successes there. My constituency office is, because we started in COVID, we really didn't have the infrastructure yet. So almost all of our communication was by email, people emailing us. I put my email in the chat. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. If you want to get a hold of me, is email me, and we will email you back within a day or two. And usually it'll be, we've got your question. We'll reach out to the appropriate ministry and get back to you. In terms of investments in Queensborough, there's been some substantial investments in the last few years. Transportation, housing, education. We just announced a few weeks ago a $20.1 million, as you all know, for Queen Elizabeth, 13 new classrooms and a neighborhood learning center for childcare at Queen Elizabeth Elementary. And that's sort of unprecedented. The New Westminster School District also put up an additional $250,000 towards that. And that's really, not only are we getting new classrooms, we're also getting space for childcare, which, from what I hear from my constituents, is a real problem. And it's on my radar. And I'm sure people will ask about that as well, but it's on my radar. And I have spoken with the Minister of State for Childcare on this, and it's something that I will be advocating for. I'm a young, well, I'm not young, my child is young, 22 months old. And so childcare is really top of mind for me as well. I'm lucky in a way. My partner, my wife, works primarily in the fashion and film industry, doing hair and makeup. And unfortunately, she's been unemployed for the last year. So year and a bit. So that's, silver line is that she's been able to take care of little Lenny for that time. In terms of transportation, Queensborough is really, really unique. There's a lot of transportation needs that we really have to, that have to be addressed, that haven't been addressed for a long time. Earlier this year in December, we announced a $6.5 million that was shared throughout the South Coast projects for sidewalk improvements, and that you may have seen the sidewalk improvements starting on the Queensborough Bridge. On housing, there's supportive housing going into Queensborough. There's a new multi-use overpass across Stewardson Way that came in. We announced that a few years ago. Queen Elizabeth Elementary also got the new accessible playground. The 5 new townhomes came last year as well in January of 2020. The Callisto Place in Queensborough. So we've been really focusing on housing on a broader level in things that are not located in Queensborough, but help with the residents of Queensborough, of course. Are the major thing is health. Our $1.5 billion almost combined provincial Fraser Health and Hospital Foundation funding for the phase 2 redevelopment of the Royal Columbian Hospital. Social development, I could actually go on and on a list of sort of investments that have been made into mental health and addictions, that have been made into housing in New Westminster, that have been made into community infrastructure, money going to the city of New Westminster, counseling for youth, dance legacy project, about $20,000 going to that. A fair amount of about $4.4 million of community fund grants have gone to local arts, sports, and environmental and multiculturalism organizations, and parents advisory councils. So Queensborough is very much on the radar. And then last thing, of course, what everybody wants to hear about, the bus, Queensborough bus. So during the I ran in 2017 as well, and I did not hear about the bus at that time. Otherwise, I truly would have brought it up, and I would have advocated for it, even though I did not, I wasn't successful. I would have advocated for it, because similarly, during the 2017 election campaign in Richmond, we were invited to visit the Richmond General Hospital, and we were shown the real sort of lack of infrastructure there for years and years, cracks in the building, patients in the underground storage area where there shouldn't be patients. And, we advocated for that. And within a few months of being elected, the Premier did come into Richmond and announce that they were going to be going ahead with a business case for a brand new acute care tower in Richmond. And that's expanded now to include much more. So I hadn't heard about it. Towards the end of the campaign this time, I met a group of young students, ex-students actually. They'd all graduated by this time, and they just wanted to. It was sort of a town hall right outside the community center. So there's about 30, 35 of them, and it was outside. We were, spread out in the community center outside in that area. I was up in the pergola, and I was answering questions, and a student brought up the bus, and he told me his story of how he would often miss the connection, not be able to go there, how hard it was. And frankly, I was quite shocked that is a situation I had not known. So I went back, and of course we promised that we would look at that, and we promised that we would get a bus service in. So our government was formed at the end of 2020, and I started advocating for it right when I came in. I wrote to them and started advocating for it, and putting it through the process. So transportation is a strange thing, because you have the federal government that puts in money sometimes. You have a provincial government that has to be involved. In the case of transportation, you also have the Ministry of Transportation. In the case of a bus to the school, you also have the Ministry of Education. So this involves the Ministry of Education, Minister for Transportation, and the Minister for Translink. So sort of 3 different levels there in conjunction with the school district. And so it is, we've been working through it, and we've been speaking with the school district. We've been in constant contact with the school district, and the Ministry of Education has. It's sort of at that stage where they've been able to communicate with each other. And, we are, it is coming. We don't know when. We're really hoping that it'll come now in the next few months. That's my sort of push, is that I can get it here in September. But because it is a fairly complicated thing, it does take some time. But it is going to come, and I'm pushing it. I'm forcing as much as I can to try and make sure that it comes then. We do know we've got some great discussions between all the different ministries, and sort of the kinks have been worked out. And hopefully this summer we should be able to. I'm hoping this summer we'll be able to at least come back with at least some more sort of positive steps that have been taken. And I think Gurveen will probably speak a little bit about it as well from the school board and the school district side. So that's where sort of the bus is. That's where the school bus is at. In terms of other infrastructure for transportation, the other thing that I have been hearing from constituents is the bridge and the gridlock on the bridge, and so that's a long-term project. I have already made the initial inquiries about looking at what are the sort of future plans for the Queensborough Bridge, and so as I get updated, I will probably update people. Probably one of the best ways to get those updates is you can always email me, but you can also go onto my Facebook Aman Singh page, and when there are updates, I will put them on there and share them, and I will also share them on Twitter as well.
Well, thanks so much, Aman. That's absolutely amazing. I appreciate hearing all of that, and I think the whole community is welcoming you to our community as well in your new role. I'll remove the spotlight there. And I think as we move through the organizations and move with the ladder that we have, Patrick, would you be willing to go next? Sure. Okay, so he's willing to go next. I will spotlight Patrick, and then we'll have Gurveen. We'll have you after that. Okay. And then we'll look at after that. While this is going on, sorry, Patrick, before you begin, I'm just reminding everyone, Kane is putting in the Slido into the chat there we really would love to hear what questions you'd like to have answered. And even if we don't get to all of them tonight, it will give us a really great idea of where we can go from here. Okay, so just please do follow that. And with that, Patrick, go right ahead.
Well, thank you for having me here on this beautiful Friday night. And it's great to have all of these people assembled actually for this kind of a meeting. It's great. I honestly haven't been to a residents association meeting yet that has this level of representation at it. So it's really great to see. My name is Patrick Johnstone. I'm a city councillor. I've been on council this is my second term, so about almost 7 years now. Sometime back around the beginning of this term, about 3 years ago, council decided that it would be a good idea if each residents association, at which time there were 12, had a council representative, a representative whose responsibility it was to sort of make sure that if the QRA, if they want, have a single contact who can answer their questions and can take their concerns to council. We don't, of course, have wards in New Westminster or in British Columbia. So, I mean, every single city councillor in New Westminster represents you, and you should be able to contact any of them. But it's been nice to be able to sort of connect with Lori and Laura and Kane and Kat. I've come to a couple of your RA meetings and just try to keep abreast of what's going on in Queensborough and try to get that information back to council. I noted that actually Councillor Nadine Nakagawa was also here on the call today. Hi, Nadine. So yeah, again, like I said, I've been a councillor for about 6 years, and I've always kind of been an active transportation advocate and a transportation advocate in the community. And so I do serve on the Transportation Advisory Committee and on the Mayor's Transportation Task Force. And so it is something that's close to my heart and something I think about a lot in my time on council, and something that is obviously important to the Queensborough neighborhood. So I'm an elected official, so I can talk for 15 minutes right now. I'm going to try to keep myself short to 5 here. And I'll just try to go quickly sort of through what's going on with transportation alone in Queensborough. Queensborough, so the city has a master transportation plan, which sort of defines, it's a big thick book that defines sort of what the city's priorities are as far as our transportation planning and how we're going to spend our money and our strategies to address the various parts of transportation. And that is everything from active transportation like sidewalks and crosswalks and bike lanes, to goods movement, to transit, to every form of transportation you can think of in the community. We think about how we're going to make that all work better. But we also have neighborhood transportation plans, and Queensborough's had a neighborhood transportation plan that is now a little bit aged. It was made in 2009. So far back, it was still called a traffic calming plan, which sort of indicates what our concern was at the time in 2009. We were a little less integrated about thinking about how transportation is a multifaceted thing. We were more about putting in speed bumps and slowing down cars where we had to slow them down. That's still part of transportation planning, but it's a much more complex thing that we go through now. So staff has indicated that updating the Queensborough transportation plan is on the work plan for, and probably starting in the fall this year. Many of our work plans have been messed up because of COVID. We have other priorities that percolate to the top, but that is something that I think the community should be expecting to hear from staff in the fall, the beginning of the staff coming to the community and asking about your transportation planning priorities. The process of putting together a neighborhood transportation plan like that could take up to a year probably, and it will involve multiple levels of sort of consultation with the community. So I want you to think as the QRA and as a community about what that transportation plan for Queensborough looks like. What's changed since 2009? You know what's changed from 2009. I think I know what's changed since 2009 in Queensborough a lot. The way you shop, where people live, where the community is really concentrated and where it isn't, how the industry has changed on Lulu Island, and that end of Lulu Island has really changed a lot. The traffic situation on the Queensborough Bridge has changed since a lot. So I don't think that just for example, the bus routes that haven't really been updated in a fundamental way since the early 2000s don't really serve the community of Queensborough in the way that Queensborough currently operates. We've heard that. That is a conversation we have to have with TransLink, but we have to have a robust plan to TransLink to demonstrate to them that we understand that if they make changes to the bus routes, it's actually going to work. And they have to understand that if they change how the bus routes work, it's going to work. So I think that's got to be part of the conversation. I hear what Aman says about talking about the Queensborough Bridge, and I recognize the stresses with the Queensborough Bridge. But I think that we have to go into this transportation plan recognizing that nothing significant is going to change in the size of the Queensborough Bridge for cars in the foreseeable future. Even just looking at how long it's taken to get the Patillo Bridge upgraded and to get changes happening on some of the major transportation bridges in the region, I just don't see us getting a significant shift in the Queensborough Bridge in the next, decade. Even if we decided to do it today, it's going to take a long time to make those changes. So I think we have to think about transportation planning, recognizing that that's not going to be something that's changed. So how are we going to make the transportation of Queensborough work better for the residents of Queensborough and the businesses in Queensborough with that bridge the way it is? Does that mean that we find better ways to make transit operate across that bridge? Does it mean queue jumping lanes so that transit buses can get past the traffic backups on the bridge easier? Does it mean that we make active transportation work across that bridge better? Does it mean that we invest in improving the Q2Q service? Or does it mean that we find a way to make a fixed crossing for the Q2Q work? Like, what does it look like for us to change the transportation planning of this end of Lulu Island? With that constraint in mind. I also keep on referring to the end of Lulu Island because I think that, and I'm glad that Aman is here in this conversation because his riding stretches into Richmond. And I think that Queensborough, we have to recognize Hamilton is in very much the same boat as Queensborough is. It's a community that is kind of separated from the rest of its major city. And it sometimes feels like it doesn't get the attention that it deserves from what Queensborough would call, or what Richmond would call the main part of Richmond and Hamilton. And I think there's an opportunity here in the transportation realm for the Hamilton community and the Queensborough community to work together because you both have the same constraints and the same problems, and thinking about how transportation in these two communities works better together. So it'd be a great opportunity for us to talk to Richmond and get that community in with our community, working together to make that work together. Oh my Lord, I'm already over my 5 minutes. So I am going to skip past talking about more of this. I can talk at length about it, and I will look forward to your questions about how we can make these things work better. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick. I appreciate that. Oh, great info. Thank you so much. And Gurveen is with us as well. I'm so happy to have Gurveen join us as the chair of the New West School Board. Did I get that right, Gurveen?
You did.
Oh, good. As you probably noticed, I'm rather new here, so I'm still learning all of everyone's roles here in the community. So I'm so excited. I got to see Gurveen in her glory running the school board meeting on Tuesday night. Wow, she is absolutely phenomenal. And I was so excited to be able to turn the tables and say, "Hey, come over to us," and have her join us here. So I would love for you to explain what you do and how what you do in the community here can help our community of Queensborough. I'm so excited that you live here too. So thanks.
I love it. Thank you, Kat. Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm coming to you from the traditional and unceded territories of the Penticton Indian Band and Okanagan peoples. So it's really hot over here. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect and share some of the work the school district has been doing, both on the bus front, but as well as in general for Queensborough. I know Peter and Aman mentioned the Queensborough to NWSS bus. So, you know, I figured I'd talk about that a little bit. And when it comes to the dedicated bus service for Queensborough students, to NWSS, I can 100% confirm that those conversations are currently happening with our Secretary Treasurer and the Ministry of Education, and they have been for a little while now. Unfortunately, I can't elaborate further on what the solutions that they're looking at, as the ministry is still figuring out what the best solution is. And frankly, this is the most amount of progress that we've ever made when it comes to this topic. And I know when I went to NWSS, we had a TransLink school special, and I'm still very much in the mind of that is the best solution, but we'll let the other folks figure it out. And I think my advice on this topic is for residents to really continue contacting your MLA. Sorry, throwing that over to you, Aman. Because if I can be frank, this isn't a program that the school district on our own is capable of sustaining long-term. And we really are relying on the province to take ownership of it. We are a welcome partner, but it's not feasible for us to take the lead on that. So I'm really happy those conversations are happening. And I think this is also a good moment for me to take recognition of the fact that sometimes statements like I just made can also be frustrating for residents, because it seems like there's a whole lot of talk and not a whole lot of action. And, you know, in my 3.5 years as a trustee, one of my reflections that I'd like to share with all of you is that it takes an incredible amount of behind the scenes work and time to get to the action part. And it's unfortunately, as frustrating as it is for me, it's not as black and white as a need that simply needs to be met. But it is about balancing it with funding constraints. Education is completely underfunded. Balancing it with strategic long-term thinking and competing priorities. And like I said, it's just incredibly difficult at times. And sometimes it's a part of the job that I really hate. Because you want the best for your community and you want to give them everything, but you know you're in a position where you can't always do that. So sometimes that can be challenging. And I think in sharing this, I want everyone to know that this isn't an attempt to make excuses. I'm just trying to be honest and really help provide a glimpse of understanding what it's like on this end of the political world. But in closing, you know, I will say that as someone who has lived in Queensborough my entire life, our community is incredibly, incredibly important to me. And when I ran for office, I had 3 goals for Queensborough. One of them was secure the Queen Elizabeth expansion. The other one was bring in childcare spaces. And the third one was to resume the bus service for NWSS students. And it took a lot of work and effort to secure the first 2 goals, but I'm really excited that we were able to do that. And I'm committed to meeting the third one as well. So anyway, that's it for me. In terms of contacting me, you folks can email me. I'll put it in the chat, as well as connect with me on social media. Either one works. And yeah, thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Gurveen. That's so lovely to hear all that. And congratulations on 3 main goals, and you are almost on. You've almost got the check marks on all 3 of them. That's fantastic. Oh, absolutely. I know from any sort of when we go into office, it's hard to get all of our goals met. It's just a tough thing. You're almost there, and I'm quite sure that the residents here, as well as the residents listening in on the recording, have really enjoyed hearing what you've all had to say about transportation and transit, and in particular, New West Senior Secondary is the one that most of us have had a visceral reaction to, as I'm sure you can imagine. So what I wanted to do now, if it's all right with you guys, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to just say, and this is our panel. I just want to show everybody, this is the panel that we work with, including some members of the QRA that are in here as well. But for those of you that are on the panel, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just put up a topic and have you guys talk about it, if that's all right. And since Gurveen was the last to speak, if we could just, if there's anything else for the rest of you that you want to talk about regarding the NWSS transportation issue of getting students from the island to the mainland in a quick enough way for them to get to school on time. And I will say that the reason that why I got this all put together with Aman originally is because my daughter will be going to NWSS in 1 year. So coming to move into Port Royal as I have, knowing that NWSS is the next step for her, it is something that I have a vested interest in. So I was very happy to hear what I did hear today from everyone. But does anyone have anything that they want to talk about on that? Feel free to go ahead. What I'm going to do, I'm actually going. Lori and Dennison, if I could get you to turn off your video, and then we'll keep it to the panel, if that's okay. And then if you want to unmute yourselves on the panel, feel free to talk, or put your hand up and say, I think I have something. Does anybody have anything else that yes, Aman, go right ahead.
And I'm just going to follow what Gurveen said about if you're concerned, write to me, right? Send me that email, because that way and rest assured, even if you don't send me the email, I have been, and Gurveen will, because it comes down to her, to the school board as well. I have been on top of this for the last few months. Like I've been pursuing this actively for the last few months as much as I can. And I'll reiterate what Gurveen said. Infrastructure projects and transportation projects do take a long time. This is not going to take as much time as, say, a new Queensborough bridge or the George Massey Tunnel, which is also in my constituency, and that so. But it doesn't happen. It's not I get elected and then the next day there's a bus. We're going to try and get it in September. And that's the other thing is, before getting elected, I've been in private practice all my life, and so I've had no government experience. But coming into this, I'm astounded by the amount of work that has to go into everything, the amount of due diligence that has to happen, because in the end, it's all of our money that we're dealing with, and the amount of trust that public servants face and have. So all of these decisions are made very, very carefully, and they're looked at not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5. They're looked at again and again, and they go through separate levels of sort of due diligence. So nothing happens fast. But rest assured, Gurveen and I are pushing this. I know the mayor is on top of it. He's also on the board of directors of TransLink, right? So that's another great advantage that we have in New Westminster, is that our mayor is on that board, and can be accountable for that as well. We can one of the ways of reach out to me, and I will try and get back as much of an update as I can.
Great, thank you, Aman. Anyone else on that topic? Oh, all right, okay. Thank you. So another topic that came up in the chat that I saw pass by was specifically around the Q2Q. Now, it was actually, I think, directed, possibly between Peter and Patrick, but the question was about the Q2Q cross. Oh, so this is actually for Patrick. Q2Q crossing funding. and where did the money go? And so people are questioning, like, you did bring up the Q2Q crossing, not the ferry. So I'm wondering if possibly, Patrick, would you have anything to say on that?
Well, I'm going to have to go back and remember the numbers. So the situation with the Q2Q is that the fixed crossing was originally budgeted to be a 15 or $18 million project, and quickly became a $40-odd million project for a variety of reasons that I can get into. There is some of that was going to be funded by what's called DAC funding, Development Assistance Contribution Funding, which was money that the city negotiated when the casino moved. Not all of that DAC funding has been spent yet. Some of it has been spent. Some of it was spent on the Queensborough Community Centre, some of it was spent on the infrastructure the Q2Q ferry uses, on the trails that go around. Some of it has been spent on things like that. It's been spent on the other side of the island too. Some of it went to get spent on the other side of, the river. It's been spent on the Anvil Center. It was spent on a variety of things. There is still some remaining money in the DAC funds, and I can't tell you right now what that's going to be spent on because it hasn't been allocated. That money is not money the city got when the casino moved, but it was money that was made as a commitment. And when the city came up with fundable projects, and the casino earned the money to be able to provide that funding, then the money became available to the city. So there is still some money remaining in the DAC funds, but that hasn't been spent yet. The remainder of the money required for the fixed crossing, well, it never existed. It was something the city had put in decided it was going to be part of their long-term capital planning. But simply when the project became out of the price of what the city could build, or felt it could build at the time, that money was moved to other capital, or I shouldn't say the money was moved, the capital room was moved to other things because that money didn't exist. So where are we? Let me talk about where we are with the fixed crossing. It hasn't really advanced since then. The concern, people who follow the story closely will recognize the problem with the fixed crossing was that it ended up becoming a very, very large project. Building a bridge that is at the level of the current train bridge is not something that is acceptable to the marine carriers, who are the organization within the Ports Authority who regulates what can and cannot be built on the river. The train bridge as it is always sits in an open position, allowing boats to pass. It only closes when a train wants to go across. If we wanted to build a pedestrian bridge that was only open when the pedestrians wanted to cross, it wouldn't be a very functional pedestrian bridge, because every time somebody would walk up to the bridge, they would have to, I guess, call to have the bridge closed, and then the bridge would be closed and would have to be opened back up again. So it can't function like that. To make a bridge that was fixed in the closed position, it had to be significantly higher than the existing bridge. 19 meters in the air, which makes it about as high as the existing Queensborough Bridge. So building a bridge that high became a really difficult infrastructure project. We couldn't make it accessible. It would have required elevators. It became a very large project. So we are still hoping that we can, as that fixed train bridge gets replaced, that fixed train bridge is an old piece of infrastructure, and we think that Southwest Rail or Southern Rail will have to replace it at some sort of point soon. We may be able to affix some infrastructure to that and save some money. We also would like to see the port become more flexible about what we can actually put on the river to make a more viable piece of infrastructure be built there. In the meantime, we are investing in the Q2Q ferry to provide a crossing. Now, the Q2Q ferry is not inexpensive to run. But we committed to doing it. Because we want it to be there to demonstrate that this is a crossing the community needs. This is a active transportation crossing the community values and needs. And if we can put a ferry there and show people who are riding the ferry, and this is a crossing that's important to the community, we're hoping that will provide a better case for us when we go to senior governments to provide funding for a fixed crossing, or legislative changes might be necessary to get a fixed crossing. You know, the ferry was closed at the initial stages of COVID. We had an interesting conversation in council when we decided to reopen it. And it really came down to a discussion at council about whether the Q2Q was a nice to have or whether it was a necessary transportation link in the community. And council committed to the idea that this is a necessary transportation link in the community and we are going to invest in it. It's just as important to us as transit and other transportation links in the community. And so we decided we were going to take the hit and we were going to invest in that crossing, even though it was not really seeing the ridership that we felt it needed to see. So I think that the city is committed to making that crossing work. It's a matter of the logistics and the cost of making it work in the long term. The good news is I think that with stage 3 coming up in July, the ferry will be back up to running at its full capacity, which is a positive, I guess I can report. But I will say that the fixed crossing is currently not, it's not something we are actively pursuing right now, any more than we're just continuing to work with senior government and continuing to say this is something that we think is an important vital link for the community. We talked to the regional government about it as being an important part of the regional greenways network. And we are going to continue to talk to the federal and provincial government about making it part of something that is, you know, a vital link in our community. I think there's an opportunity for us to talk to TransLink about bringing the Q2Q into the regional transit system, so it's a seamless part of the transit system. There's opportunities to improve this, and we're committed to it. So I know it's not the answer people want to hear about a fixed crossing, but we're working on it, I guess. But I think the Q2Q is the best thing we're going to be seeing in the short term, to be honest.
Great, thank you so much, Patrick. Anyone else want to talk on the Q2Q? You know, like related to ports, it kind of comes into the river. I'm kind of looking at you, Peter, just checking to see if there's anything on your mind that you want to say here. I'm not sure if it makes sense. So,
well, it does. I mean, Patrick, I think gave a terrific synopsis of where things are with the fixed link, and there's no doubt that part of the problem is the interaction with federal agencies. I noticed Lori earlier had asked a question about the Port Authority and how that works with the community. And it's quite simple that the Port Authority, and this is dating back to the time when the Vancouver Port Authority took over the Fraser Port. We knew that undoubtedly, which is why I was so opposed to it, that the Vancouver Port Authority operations tend to operate fairly indiscriminately and not with a lot of public consultation. That's not just the problem with Vancouver. When you go right across the country, other port authorities as well have tended to act in a very arbitrary and high-handed manner. So the Port Authority you have to constantly push back against, and this is what we've endeavored to do on everything, including the local applications that have a real impact on Queensborough. But the Port Authority structure needs to be overhauled because it's not just a problem in British Columbia, it is a problem right across the country. And there needs to be a new approach with port authorities that actually force them, oblige them, because the federal government is in a sense their bosses for direction, oblige them to work with the community, oblige them to hear community concerns, and actually pay more than lip service to legitimate concerns that are raised in the community. So that's more of a longer term project. Like Patrick talked about the fixed link, we really need to overhaul and bring the port authorities back into a context where they're listening to the community and are responsive to community concerns. That it's a problem that we're aware of, and it's a problem that we want to push back on. Currently, I'll say frankly, that there's not a lot of interest in the current federal government to overhauling port authorities, but it is something that will need to happen, and we're committed to continuing to push in that regard.
Great. Thanks, Peter. Peter, I do have a question that kind of came out of that one. I saw it in the chat there. There was a question about whether or not, and maybe actually it might be related to Patrick as well, but I think it's more port related, about what if we wanted to add, like if we wanted the ferry, the Q2Q, to act more like it does down in Vancouver, where I used to live, where it was like multiple locations. Someone was saying, what about Thompson Landing? Could we do that? Now, the reason I'm keeping Peter on the screen here is I think it might have something to do with the Port Authority. That might be why we are not able to do that. Peter, does that sound familiar to you? Patrick, I'll put you up here too if you want to talk as well, but Peter first.
I'm absolutely sure Patrick will know more about this than I do. This is the first I've heard of it. But
Okay.
if we need to contact the Port Authority and advocate on this, I'm perfectly willing to do that.
Thanks, Peter. Patrick.
I think the only part the Port Authority would get involved in that is I don't know if there's any port facilities down that end that aren't already allocated to log booming and other uses. If it's already been used by log booming and other uses down there, the chances of us getting the rights to actually dock down there in any meaningful way are between slim and none. The challenge we had to get them to allow us to permit us to bring passengers down onto a dock at the existing site on the Queensborough side were formidable. Yeah, because again, it's an area very close to where they do log booming and they just don't like that idea. Frankly, the limitation on going to Thompson Landing really is just financial. It's just the idea that right now we are spending $500,000 a year on this service. We are subsidizing it by $500,000 a year. And we would have to, I don't know the numbers. I shouldn't quote perfect numbers on what we would have to do if we actually ran to further stops, but it would be significantly more than that. And, you know, that's one of those things that we would love to talk to as an opportunity if we started partnering with senior governments or with TransLink around providing more on-water service. But frankly, I just don't think it's within the funding I can't speak on behalf of all of council, but I would suggest that it's probably not within the funding realm that council would be comfortable with if we were to try to add more stops and more service on the Q2Q right now.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Question on on that same topic is you were saying like the funding. Obviously, you put in a number. I won't repeat it, but would it be fair to say that if there was more uptake on the Q2Q itself, like as we open up, obviously, would that help the system? Like, would that help the system move more? Are we getting the head tilt? Because possibly, I'm just putting that out there for the residents that are listening in.
I would say yes. I mean, I want lots of people to ride that boat for a variety of reasons. One reason is because it would help. I mean, the boat is never going to, at maximum capacity when that boat is running, we're still going to be subsidizing. It's never going to pay for itself, but that's fine. I mean, we've committed to already providing that as a service. You know, there's lots of things in the city, from swimming pools to recreation centers, that don't pay for themselves, right? We are a community. We pay for common good services through our taxes. So it's never going to pay for itself. But if it's fully used, if it's fully allocated, that really makes a strong case for us to go to senior governments or to go to TransLink and say, look, this service is really valuable. People are really using this thing. You need to, you know, our community has demonstrated the need for this service. You know, you are the regional transportation authority. You should be helping us provide this service. You should be allowing us to use your payment systems on this. Like, you know, we can make that case. And again, more importantly, if we have thousands of people using, it's funny, you know, there's a joke about bridges. No one ever proves the need for a bridge by counting how many people are swimming across a river. That's not how you measure whether you need a bridge or not, right? Unfortunately, we find ourselves a little bit in that situation with the fixed link. I think we feel like we need to demonstrate that this fixed link is important and different than the sidewalk provided on the Queensborough Bridge. We feel like we have to prove that people are willing to swim across the river in order to provide that fixed link. So yes, I want the community to use that boat, because I also love having that boat, because I love using it to get over to Queensborough. Yeah, I want you to use it. Please use it.
Thanks, Patrick. All right, well, thank you very much. I am going to kind tilt this a little bit towards the. Well, I'm gonna try to talk about this in a slightly different way. We've kind of talked about Queensborough and Hamilton. We'll add for Aman. We'll add Hamilton in there too. We have a unique kind of island feel to the rest of our communities, to the rest of our community that we, our city, right? And I've seen a couple people put in here, we do pay a lot of taxes, and that's actually quite true. We pay a lot of taxes for the benefit of things that we actually find very difficult to get to. Let's just use the example of going to a swimming pool. As the one example that comes to mind. And by the way, I love the new name of the new aquatic center. That's fantastic. So there are questions about, we do spend or we do pay a lot of money in taxes for things that essentially we can't use because they're on the mainland and it's very hard for us to get to. And is there any way that I'm not even sure who to ask this question to. There's that part of the question. There's also the question of there's going to be a whole lot more taxes coming to these organizations because we have a very large group of people who are going to be moving here in the next few years. Anyone who lives in Queensborough knows that we are expanding our community in a very large way very quickly. And that includes childcare and getting access to sports activities for children and so many other things. So I'm not really sure where to take this, but I do want to make sure that, like, recently it's been Peter and Patrick. So I'm wondering if Aman or Gurveen, if either of you have anything that you want to say on either of those topics. I'm just going to kind of leave it nice and open here. Anything at all? That's a
Sure, I'll take a shot at that.
Go for it. You take a shot.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. Queensborough has grown massively in the last 20 years. Like, I remember visiting a family friend of mine back in like 2001, and it's a different Queensborough now than it was in those 20. It's probably one of the fastest growing areas. So, and I think I recognize that. I know the government recognizes that, and hence you've seen an increase in infrastructure funding. Queen Elizabeth School, there'll be more things coming in a little while. But if there are specific things that are needed, that the community needs, best way to inform the provincial government of that is to write to your MLA, right? Because we have, there's childcare all the way across, Richmond and Queensborough. There's a hospital. There's so many things that come at us. But if they're not front and center, we don't know about them. So really, it's I'm asking you to let me know what is a priority, and we can pick that up on the higher level. And I think that's the same for the school district, and the same for the city council, and it's the same for the federal level as well. That there are so many things that are out there, but if there's something that residents feel is important, we need to know. And as we come out of COVID and we're able to meet more, it makes it a lot easier, right? But really the best way to get it on record and get it out there is to email us, and that way we have a mechanism for finding out about it and getting back to you. Queensborough is the one thing I do want to say about Queensborough and Hamilton is, yes, it's really complicated, and but that whole island mentality, and that I almost call it, I know many of my friends in the South Asian community call it their village. Yes. And it really is like that. Like, that's why I love, even during the campaign, I spend, the Richmond part is much larger, but I spent a disproportionate amount of time in Hamilton and Queensborough because I enjoy it much more, because there is this sense of community that you don't have everywhere else. Like, you really are lucky to have that in Queensborough. Like, that's really rare, and so close to everything else as well, right? They're being isolated is problematic. Being on a river delta is also problematic, because infrastructure projects that'll cost $1 somewhere else are going to cost $1.50 in Queensborough, right? That's one of the things that I was hearing back about childcare. Like, why don't we build more childcare centers? It costs more. We will get them, right? But we have to funnel that funding there, because any infrastructure project in Queensborough costs a lot more because of the unique building circumstances. So yeah, those. Anyone else want to add anything?
Wow, thanks, Aman. Thanks for actually bringing that up about the whole, it costs a different amount here because of structural considerations because it's a delta. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Anyone else have anything on that topic at all? No. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to check to see if there's anything else. We have covered. I'm just going back to the Slido where everybody was putting in their questions. And I believe that we have covered all the questions that were asked in one form or another. I'm not saying that I covered every single question, but NWSS came up quite a few times in that list. I'd say we covered that. And we also talked about Q2Q, fixed crossing. Thank you for that, Patrick. And so someone just put in here, no pool center. The new pool center is a no-go for Queensborough residents. And it is very true. It is very hard for us to get there. So just talking about, activities that many of our other, family over on the rest of New West would see as just like running up the hill to get to the aquatic center. We don't have that luxury. It takes a very long time for us to commute halfway across our own city because of where we are, and that it makes it quite difficult. There is a question here, and I'm not sure. I think this is actually directed at Patrick or Peter, and it may not actually be either one of you, but I'll just put it out there. It's the last question that I'm going to take for today, and then I think we'll look at wrapping up. The question is, and it is kind of close to my heart, and Lori has asked it, and it's actually about the Port Royal Beach. It is actually right outside my front door, my back door. What you're seeing over my shoulder here is the Port Royal Beach. And the beach itself has eroded over a number of years. And so I'm guessing Patrick has something to say about this, but I'm wondering if Peter does as well, because I have a funny feeling it might be federally related and related to the port, or he might have something to say on it. But I'll start with you, Patrick, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So can you just explain what the problem is? And I think you already know, just so everybody else might.
Yeah, I was actually looking across the water at it yesterday. I was walking along the quayside and looking.
We probably waved at each other.
Yeah, maybe. Yesterday evening. Yeah, so I guess when the houses along there were built originally, there was a significant amount of sand located at the Queensborough beach. And over a number of significant tide cycles or flood cycles, it has gone away for the most part, a lot of the sand. I kind of winced when I saw it come up, because all I know for sure is it is jurisdictionally really, really challenging. It is marine area regulated. And so from the environmental side, it will be regulated both by the Port Authority and probably by the Provincial Ministry of Environment. It's jurisdictionally challenging to do, and physically challenging to do, to put sand there. I don't want to make it because I'd love to actually talk to Peter about this, because I have an idea. I mean, I have some ideas about how we could deal with some logistical problems around it, but I can't make any guarantees about the jurisdictional challenges around it. So I don't want to make a commitment. I guess the best thing I can say is it is on my radar. Yes, I have heard from your Residents Association has already raised this to me, and yeah, it's on our radar. And I don't let me get away with not answering this question for too much longer. Okay, it is on my radar anyway. I have had a couple of initial discussions about it, but I can't give you a significant answer right now, just because the jurisdictional challenges are jurisdictional challenges.
That's great. Thank you, Patrick. I do actually have a question that it might not be related to the sand, but there is a question here related to the safety of the beach itself. Because the sand has eroded, there is no safe way for people to get down from the track to the beach, and so people are asking about whether or not there can be railings or something like that put up just for the safety aspect. So not related to I know some people have asked for more sand, and others are asking about the safety. Okay. So I'm just kind of going through here. Yeah, and somebody else brought up about
yeah, I'll have to bring that. I'd have to bring that up with Parks and Rec.
Okay. Okay.
And Nadine is on the line. I know that she's involved with.
Yes. Yeah, she actually just she put a text up in there. City staff looked into this when the RA wrote about it. So yes, thank you, Nadine. It was put in by the developer and then the environmental concerns about replacing it. So it looks like Nadine and Patrick are both aware.
So let me follow up with Parks and Rec, and I'll get back to the QRA about the whether there's a safety issue, whether they want to go deal with some railings or something to deal with that, or whether there's an opportunity for us to look at sand.
Okay, Lori.
I've already had a meeting with Dean Gibson and an outside hydrologist consultant on the beach on June 11th.
This year? Like
this
last
year,
month?
like just 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you're ahead of me, Lori.
Well, I'm way ahead of you, yeah. Anyways, the two things that came up were the environmental aspect, because of putting in whether the fill comes out of the bottom of the Fraser, and it's sand that comes from the bottom of the Fraser, would that meet the Port Authority and in the environmental? The other part is, would the Port Authority grant that we could put the sand back in? It's been recognized that we've lost just about 3 feet of sand in there. And the hydrologist says it's primarily due to tidal and wave action from the tugboats because it's a working river.
Yeah.
So it is being looked at. There are some mitigating structures. There should be a report. I met with Dean Gibson, an outside consultant to the city who has done all the diking around here to begin with. And I think the engineering company is Vision something, but I just got to know everybody's name, but I didn't get to know the guy who is actually
Advisian.
It could have been that. His name was Harold, the engineer, a very nice guy. Said there were some other ways that we could mitigate some of the sand erosion, but he says as long as it's a working river and the tidal aspect, this happens. And along with changing the diking along the river, like when they put all the extra rabble around the end of Lulu Island to support the rest of Port Royal and the new development, that changes the way the water flows.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's a complex issue, but it is being looked at right now from the city side. And in terms of the railing, Dean Gibson was wanting to hold off on the railing until we had some sort of, possibly if we could mitigate it by being able to get some part of sand in there. If it was a quick response, then we wouldn't have that. But it has been also recognized that there is a liability there because it is about 55-inch drop from the edge of the walkway onto the sand, which isn't there now. It's mostly rocks.
Yeah. Thanks, Lori.
All right. Thank you so much. The only other thing that got brought up on related to the Port Royal Beach was that, and Patrick, this is just for you for going back to council, I guess, or to go to Parks and Rec. Apparently, it's actually the trail is actually not for bikes, and yet there's only one sign that says it's not for bikes. So just putting that out there, because it is a transportation meeting. So on that note, I think it's coming to, we're almost at 90 minutes, and I just wanted to wrap this up. I think that I handled all the questions and all the comments, and if I missed any, I am terribly sorry. But I think we got an amazing amount of work covered, so many questions that I know I've heard a lot of people ask me, and you guys were able to answer them in such a great way and very interactively. I just want to thank all of our panel that came up tonight. I can't stress enough how much I've really enjoyed meeting each of you if I hadn't met you before this, and having a better understanding of how you all can help myself, and also my entire community. And I can't stress enough how great it is that we've had you all here. I'm really hopeful that we're able to do this in some form more often, and hopefully get you all in the same room again. You know, I'm just happy that it happened, and I do have this recorded, or I will have it recorded, and I'm perfectly happy to get it to people who weren't able to be here. Kane, are you wanting to say something?
Yes, just before everybody leaves, back on the Slido poll where you've been asking your questions. There's a tab for polls, and in there I've put a open answer. If you have any comments or suggestions about tonight's session, this is more for the QRA, so we can improve for next time. Please put it in there, and we'd love to get your feedback so we can improve for next time.
All right.
If everybody wants to turn their cameras on, let's take a screen cap.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. So yes, please, everyone, turn on your cameras. I'm going to put you all into a gallery view here. And let's see if I can actually ask everyone to put their, no, no. I can't ask you. Yeah, you guys can all bring yourselves if you'd like to join us on caption here. Kane, can I leave that to you to?
Won't let me turn my camera on, so I'm not going to.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I don't know why it's not letting me.
That's okay. But it's just always great to see who we've got here. And again, if you can join us on this by turning on your video, give it another 30 seconds. Kane, can I get you to take a snap?
Sure, I can do that. When everybody's ready, I will do that.
All right, everybody.
People are probably putting pants on and things like that, right?
But thank you all for being here. I'm just so chuffed that you are all here.
All right, I'm gonna. Oh, there's Laura. And there's Laura. Hello.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Here we go. Smile.
Everybody ready? One. Oops. Hang on. 1, 2, 3.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks
everyone
everyone
for suggesting that. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I hope you guys all got some information out of this that you probably didn't know before. Just even one little fact is all I'm looking for, is that everybody gets something and went, how fascinating. So thank you all so much for participating. I hope that you all stay healthy, and please stay hydrated this week. Whatever you do, please stay hydrated. Thank you so much. The QRA is happy to have sponsored this, and I hope that we can do it in some form again soon.
And can I add one thing, Kat?
Oh, yes.
Thank you to Peter for sending out an email this afternoon regarding cooling centers over the weekend. For Queensborough residents, the QCC is a cooling center over the weekend. So if you see anyone in need or showing any signs of dehydration or heat sickness, please urge them to go to the Queensborough Community Center.
Absolutely.
And while we're at it, we should just head to the spray park and just have a big old party at distance.
That's great.
But
great.
You know,
at distance. At least for the next couple of days. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening, and hope to see you again soon, and maybe even in person. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Kat. You've got a bright future in moderation, Kat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
This is all new to me. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.